Please help me welcome Dr. Tamsin Astor, Chief Habit Scientist. Welcome back to Direction, Not Perfection.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. It's so nice to be here.
Oh, it's so good to have you back. Do you realize it's been, I think, a solid year plus since you were on
Really?
last? Yes.
Oh my goodness. I know, because today it's a year since the pandemic, since the World Health Organization labeled it the pandemic. And I was like, wow.
I know. Well, I was thinking as I was sitting here, I'm like, I'm pretty sure last time you and I talked, it was right when the whole big shutdown happened because I was buried in a corner, like back in a bedroom, trying to
Yep.
not have kid noises as you and
Yes,
I were.
that's right.
Yeah. And here we are today. We're back in offices and happy spots. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. I would first of all, because it's been this long, can you just update us on what has been going on with you personally, professionally? What new projects do you have up your sleeve?
Yay, fun. Thank you. So professionally, I've launched two fun things, which have been real passion projects of mine. One is a membership program that's called the Habits Collective, which is really exciting and it's starting to grow. And we meet twice a month for Q&A and you get one piece of content a month. And it starts with the neuroscience of habits and introduction to Ayurveda, because those are the two lenses that I coach and speak through. And that's really fun. And then I've also started this program called Cleanse and Create, which is about kind of clearing the deck so that you can listen to yourself and then get into the unleashing, right? And then you unleash in the create piece where you create your framework for your life. So then you can articulate what habits to hang on that vision, right? Because one of the things that I found is that when people fall off the habits wagon, it's because they haven't really got a clear idea of how important it is to them, or why it's important that they've got this habit. So doing this process of clearing all of the gunk out, right, in the mind, in the body, and in your physical space, and then going, okay, so now I've cleared it out, I can sort of feel and listen a bit more. I've got a bit of energetic space. What do I want? What kind of world do I want to create? What kind of life am I creating? Who do I want to be? Who do I want to help, right? So that's really fun. And then the other big one is that I'm creating a certification program with a local business school, corporate college, as part of Tri-C, the Cuyahoga Community College, which will be for CEOs and leaders. It'll be a 1.8 credit hour course on being a mindful leader,
Oh,
which
so
is just
cool.
really exciting that there is a sort of recognition of the need in the world now to understand how to manage your reactivity as a leader, how to understand how to approach, managing your own sort of mindfulness and your own stress levels, so that affects how you lead, right? So those are the sort of really exciting professional developments in the last year. Yeah.
Yes, that was huge. I was kind of expecting one, not, not three.
Podcast I'm putting together too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that little thing that's happening, the
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. It's all go, Lindsay.
Wow. Do you feel like the pandemic gave you this opportunity to, was it a building season for you? And now all of this
Yeah.
is just coming out?
Yeah, I think I think one of the things that was interesting to me very early on in the pandemic is I realized that people were struggling with habits. And since that's my strong point, and that's where I really help people, is I realized all the stuff that I've been kind of overthinking and pondering and sort of creating and beta testing and wondering if I should release. I was like, it's not going to help anybody if it's in my head or on my hard drive.
Right,
you know,
right.
I was
Yeah.
like, I just got to put it out there and see if it can help people. And I think that was one of my initial realizations. And I think, the pandemic really highlighted habits for a lot of people. Some working mothers really like the opportunity to work from home if their kids were not too tiny with the homeschooling, because they
Right.
suddenly had an extra hour a day back, an hour and a half with the commute, right? That they
Right.
didn't have, right? If they had space to work from home and their kids were not, 2 and 3 and 4, right? So, for some people, it really it allowed them to create habits that they'd been kind of sidelining. For other people, it was incredibly difficult, because suddenly they were parenting and teaching. And, at the end of last year, 3 million women left the workforce because they simply couldn't handle it all, and it all landed on them to parent and teach and
Right.
run their business, and so they walked away from business, walked away from their work. And so I think, this year has been a real it's really highlighted the role of habits, and do you have good habits, or have you found the whole thing so stressful you just sat on the sofa watching Netflix and eating pizza?
Yes. Right. Did we totally get paralyzed or did it launch
Right.
you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to go back and unpack a couple things really fast of what you were starting to talk about, though. I make you talk about this all the time, but you throw out Ayurveda. I never can say it right. Like it's a common term, and I don't think it is for our listeners. So go into that again one last time.
So Ayurveda, it literally means the science of life. That's the two words are Ayurveda, and it's the sister science to yoga. And in the East, it's taught alongside yoga and yoga philosophy. But in the West, we separate everything. We don't like to put anything together. Like we forget that we're holistic beings, right? And what's really powerful about Ayurveda is that it really like one of the core features of it is this recognition that your daily habits kind of constitute your well-being, right? So the dinacharya, your daily rituals, like how you sleep, how you eat, whether you're eating at the same time every day, whether you're sleeping at the same time every day, all of that really contributes to your well-being. And then the other piece that is really important, and I love about the concept of Ayurveda, and it's been around for about 6,000 years, is that to be healthy in the West is absence of disease. To be healthy in the Ayurvedic definition is, are you seated in the self?
Oh, so
And it's a
good.
completely different way of thinking about what it means to be healthy, because you can have no symptoms that would classify either you like physically unhealthy, sick, or like DSM, like depression, anxiety, or whatever, right? But you could have this sort of overriding sense that you're in the wrong marriage, you're in the wrong job, that you're living in the wrong place, that you just don't feel right, but nothing is quote unquote diagnosable. So in the West, you'd be healthy, right?
Yeah.
And that, to me, this sort of more holistic sense of what does it mean to be a healthy human, to me is so appealing as an overriding way of viewing us as sort of holistic humans.
So when we're talking your membership that you started and everything that you just stated, you're trying to bring your members to be this like holistic being of health.
Right.
Okay.
So I basically coach around with two lenses. So the first two modules that I encourage them all to dive into are these two 30-minute videos. One is the neuroscience of habits. So that's understanding how you can take that radical power to create your own habits and change your own habits. And also the lens of Ayurveda, because, the way I coach with Ayurveda is, we don't have to get super tied up in the nitty gritty of it, but if you want to, we can, because that's fun. But the main idea is that it's an energetic lens, which when you start to understand you're not battling against your nature and what's going on outside, right? So, living in Northeast Ohio, December, January, February, when it's 20 degrees, maybe even minus 20 Fahrenheit, most of our bodies are struggling to stay warm. So yes, we know that like raw vegetables and hummus is a healthy food to eat, but actually maybe at that time of year, that's not a healthy food because your body is struggling to stay warm, and that roasted vegetables and soups and stews is a more efficient way, so it's understanding it in that kind of way so that you're just, not battling, right?
Right. I mean, if we could all get to that point where the flow just is happening,
Yeah.
and yes, we're paying attention to it, but it's not taking up all of our thought process all day long is the goal, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
I wanted to go back to even you mentioning, you and I both throw this out a lot, like the big why we care, but you have taken it more steps, because I think people can understand that it's important to understand what we're fighting for, but you really dive in, and this has been like burning on your heart. I feel you and I talked on the phone too, and the why was like one of the first things that popped out. So go into that again for us, just because I don't think we can hear it enough. Like the importance of that why.
Right. So I think the why, I often talk about the why as like part of the bigger vision, right? So that's partly your purpose, like what do you feel called to this planet in this lifetime to be doing? Who do you want to be helping? Do you want to be a parent? Do you want to change the environment? Do you want to work with animals? Like, what are you called to do? Are you called to serve? Are you called to create? Are you called to nourish? Are you called to build community? And I think articulating that and identifying that is really, really helpful, because it becomes like the North Star, which helps pull you forward, get you out of bed every morning, and also provides a framework to keep moving you forward when the proverbial hits the fan, whether it's something like the pandemic, or whether it's a job loss or a diagnosis or a relationship ending, right? You've still got this bigger framework that will motivate you to keep going. And the other piece that I think is really important as part of that big why is understanding pleasure. Because I think, one of the things that we can get really stuck in, and the thing that I've really noticed having grown up in Europe and having lived in the US for nearly 19 years, is that there's much more of that sort of Protestant work ethic woven through the culture here, in terms of, barely, most people don't take their 2 weeks vacation a year in the US.
Right.
European countries get 4-6 weeks off every year. When you wander through the streets of Amsterdam at 5 p.m. on a weekday evening, people are on their bikes and heading to the pubs and sitting in the bars, having a beer, going, it's the end of the day, right? 5 o'clock in America, people are still at their desks, hustling away, So this idea of that, we can't have productive lives, that somehow purpose and pleasure are going to clash. And I view them as like the edges of a river, right?
Yeah.
And that we can play with them, right? That they don't have to be one or the other. You don't have to live a life of purpose and mean that you have no pleasure, or live this sort of hedonic, pleasure-filled life and do nothing good for society and humanity.
Yes.
Right? They can coexist. Let's do it.
Mind blowing, right? We are allowed to have pleasure in our life.
It shouldn't be a reward for check the box. It should be just like a general framework that we lean into. That's what I think.
Yeah. Oh, love it. I'm going to brag on you for a minute. We're going to just keep bragging on you because I think you're amazing. Okay. So first of all, the book that's already out, one of the words that I keep noticing from your website, your Facebook, your book, is this word unleash. Your book, Force of Habit, Unleash Your Power by Developing Great Habits. So the word unleash is on there. Your other way that you mentioned unleash is unleash outrageous joy, which I feel like is a little bit what maybe we're just talking about. But go through all your platforms here, from book to podcasts to Facebook. Like, I know that you are just trying to spread more of you out in the world and finding these platforms to do it. Kind of, and it's a lot of time. Walk me through all of your sources here.
So I'm on Facebook a lot, and I do lots of lives. I have a free Facebook group called Fabulous Habits for Conscious Leading, where I teach meditation every week. I'm on LinkedIn. I do a lot of speaking. I think I've already done about 6 or 7 speaking events already, and we're only in the second week of March. I think I had 6. I think I started this year with 16 speaking events lined up already, which was awesome. The new one that I'm exploring is Clubhouse. Starting on Monday, I'm going to be co-hosting a room every Monday at 12 Eastern with a transformation coach called Dragon. And so he and I are going to be hopping on there, and it's called Behave, Change Your Habits, Change Your Life. And Behave is also the name of my podcast, because I wanted that sort of cheeky, behave, because I'm really interested in behavior and how, whether it's something that you've personally navigated in your own journey. So one of my interviewees was an addict and now is a therapist for people going through recovery. Helping support behavior change in your community or with your clients, right? And so Clubhouse is a really fun new space to play in, because it's so informal, and because it's not visual, people can just hop on anywhere and join rooms and have conversations, and it's the sort of new frontier. So Facebook, my Facebook groups, and Clubhouse are my current big platforms, and then my book, and then I send out a weekly newsletter with sort of tips and tricks and fun things to play with.
Okay, so, and we're not going to leave this for a second. So first of all, Clubhouse, I was just introduced to it literally yesterday. I had one of my therapist friends was like, you need to check this out. It is like new frontier, like you're talking about. So I guarantee all of our listeners right now are like, I have no idea what we're talking about. But if you look up the app Clubhouse, you jump on, and like you're saying, it's just audible. It'd be like listening to a podcast, except your listeners can jump on and have open conversations with you, correct?
Right. And it's almost like a radio station, right? So there are the key to success there, and the people who are doing really well, the people who are hosting regular rooms. And once you're in the room and the event's going on, you can then ping people who you can see that they're active and say, hey, join this room right now. And people jump into the room, and you can either be muted in the audience and listen, or you can be invited up onto stage and speak. And it connects to your Twitter account and your Instagram account. And so you can put in your profile like who you are and what you do. And it's becoming a really fun place because people just hop on and ask questions and share how they're going and what we can do to support each other.
Right. Oh, so good. So yes, I feel like people need to start checking that out. You're going to start hearing more and more about that. Your podcast behaved. So when I first saw that you were launching it and you're like, if anyone would like to be a speaker, I have a form for you to sign up. So I was like, fun, I would love to join Tamsin. And I get on and I'm like, I think I'm too boring to join you. I forget exactly how you worded it in your description, but it went along with like, you just want fun and edgy and all of this. And I'm like,
yeah, I think I said something like, no conversation is out of bounds, like, something orgasms and like whatever, and I think you were like, oh my goodness me. Because I mean, like, I want people to know on my podcast, they can drop the F-bomb and talk about orgasm if it's part of their behavior journey. And if it's not, it's not,
Right. Just nothing, like be you is all you were really saying.
Right, exactly. And that for me is part of the unleash thing, really. Like if we want to get back to that, for me, unleashing is it's uncaging, it's freeing, it's releasing the bounds of the shoulds, because I talk about that a lot in the book too, is this, we get so should on by society, by our gender, by our religions, by all of these, structures that have tried to say, this is what you should look like. This is how you should behave. This is what you should say. This is what, you should be a mother. You should, what all the things that we get should on, right? And for me, unleashing is really about deeply becoming who you are, authentically yourself, and then just doing it, right? And not overthinking it, right?
Yes.
And being in a space where, in my Cleanse and Create program, one of the sections, we talk about freedom. And for me, it's really important to be in a space of emotional and intellectual freedom where I don't have to sit there and think, should I filter what I want to say, right? For me, I like to be in communities where I can really authentically be myself and not have to sit there and like, double think and question and wonder and like, would I offend this person, or would I upset this person, or can I, or would that be too braggy, or all of the things, right? Like, unleashing is just becoming authentically yourself.
So I have a question for you. Do you feel like some of your coaching goes over better within like more of European culture versus here, like as far as you're saying, I'm not going to say this right, but just like there are different personalities, or like it's a little more like you said, okay, could you understand where I'm trying to go with this?
Yes. Rule followers, like you being a rule follower, you mean?
Thank you.
No, I mean, I think, most of my clients are US based because I'm based in the US. And I think for me, the commonality or the thread between my clients is that they tend to be well educated, if not most of them have postgraduate degrees. My clientele and audience tend to be in that kind of sphere. So they tend to be well traveled and relatively well experienced, and are open to thinking about things from multiple different ways, right? So they're open to thinking about their experience and how to better their experience and the experience of the people that they serve.
Yeah.
Right. They feel less limited, right? I guess would be the way I would identify it. And so they tend to be kind of entrepreneurs or executives, or and I've got a small group of clients who are mothers who took time off and are now going, okay, now I want to get back into the workplace. Like, what the hell am I going to do? Like, how do I do this? But it tends to be people who are really well educated and are just really curious about how they can, make money, have impact, and have pleasure while they're doing it, right?
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you. Thanks for reading my brain and knowing what I needed out of you. I would love, because I join you on some of your Monday meditations, if you could expose our audience to this. And what I was thinking is I will turn my visual off here and just let you go, and we can settle into one of your meditations if that's okay.
Absolutely. I love it. All right,
All
let's do
right.
it.
So let me turn my little video off here and you go ahead.
All right. So start by placing your feet on the ground if you're in a chair and taking your back away from the chair. So you're sitting up using your core. If you're on the ground, you can sit cross-legged and really feel your butt cheeks ground down, your knees drop open, and then stack your hands so the tips of your thumbs are touching and your hands can rest in your lap. Close your eyes. Soften your tongue in your mouth. Soften the space between the eyebrows. Soften the muscles along the jawline and start to lengthen the exhales. Slowly letting the breath move in and out through the nose. And gently bringing the mind into the body through the action of breath, leaving behind what you've done today already and what more else you've got to on your to-do list. And just being right here, right now. And when thoughts pop into your mind, just notice, labeling them thinking, coming back to the inhale, excuse me, and exhale. So don't worry if your mind starts creating to-do lists. Just notice, oh, thinking, let it go, come back to the inhale and exhale. And then if there are noises outside, dogs, dishwashers, kids, again, just notice and come back to the breath. It's about not following the thoughts or the external noises and just constantly coming back to the inhale and exhale. Notice if you tend to slump or shoulders shrug up around the ear. Just keep the spine in its natural neutral curve, softening the shoulders, broad chest, open heart, soft features. So remember, meditation is not about having an empty mind. It's about learning not to react. It's about learning not to follow the internal dialogue or the external drama, and just being present right here, right now, with the mind in the body. If you find your mind wandering off, you can count your exhales up to 10 and then start at 1 again, as a way of anchoring the breath, the mind, and the body together. Slow inhales and exhales. And then slowly bring your hands together at heart center and bow your head to your heart. Lift your chin and your chest. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings never be parted from freedom's true joy. May all beings dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Namaste. Thank you for meditating with me.
Thank you so much for guiding us through that. You're going to have to go into your belief system around meditation, because I think it is completely underutilized, and bring us in so that we can stay just as motivated to stick with this.
So meditation has a number of really positive effects for the mind and the body. One of the things that is really helpful for with the mind is managing your reactivity. So what do I mean by that? Managing kind of the trigger level at which point you lose it, right? Which I think is helpful for anybody, but particularly right now with all of the stress going on in the world, and is a core feature of the mindful leadership certificate that I'm doing with Tri-C Corporate College. Because, you know, if we can't learn how to modulate our experience and our reactivity to others, we won't be in a space of intentionality and creativity. So what do I mean by that? Well, when we are in a state of reactivity, we're driven by ego, we're driven by fear, we're driven by anger, we're driven by nervousness that, somebody else is going to outperform us, right? But when you're in that expansive, abundant, creative, intentional space, actually organizations perform really well, right? They better return on investment, everybody's happier, everybody's more on track. All of that stuff comes in when there's a sense of psychosocial safety, right? That people feel like, I'm not battling for my position, I'm not battling to be liked, right? I'm seen and heard and valued. And understanding your own mindfulness is really, really key. So, understanding your ability to navigate through the world, right? So that's one of the key features to it. It's also really good, and I teach in my group, I teach an empathy compassion meditation, which actually grows the area of your brain associated with compassion and empathy. And that's another really key part of being a successful, human, right? Is that you are able to recognize the suffering of others. You're able to recognize the emotions of others. You're able to support other people when they are going through experiences of trauma, right? Another thing is that it's really good for, blood pressure and, lung function and all of those sort of bodily features, right? PTSD, there's so many things that meditation, because it just brings you into that awareness of I always overthink what I did in the past. You're like, oh, I'm going to notice that. Or I'm always really nervous about what's going to happen in the future. Or, wow, I'm thinking a lot about how life will be better if I lost 10 pounds, got that job, bought that house, got that car, right? And you start to notice in your own kind of mental landscape where you tend to go. And that's useful information to work with, right?
Yeah. So do you get frustrated that it's taking people a while to jump on board with this? Or again, do you feel like your clientele actually is more there than the average person?
No, I mean, it's interesting. Like I am an avid reader. I read 56 books last year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And one of the books I loved was The Buddha and the Badass, Vishen Lakhiani, who created Mind Valley. And he basically says in that book, if you are not utilizing intuition, meditation, mindfulness in your daily life, you know, you're missing a huge area of growth and evolution and, you know, leadership capability, right? He's like, you know, basically he lays it out. He's like, you're really being dumb. Like, you're really, like, you're not being a smart leader. He really lays it out in that book. And I think that, you know, the more and more we get people like, you know, him and Oprah, you know, pairing up with Deepak Chopra, and people who people listen to and take seriously and value their opinion and say, like, this stuff changed my life. I mean, it's a little bit like the conversation I think is really interesting about sobriety, and how many, you know, famous people are stepping forward now and saying, you know, I'm sober, right? And the reason I am, and this is how it changed my life, and this is what it means. And, you know, having these open conversations. Glennon Doyle's brilliant about that. Brene Brown, you know, she's been sober for 20 years or so as well.
Right.
All these people stepping forward and saying, you know, meditation, mindfulness, journaling, reflection, therapy, all of these things that have often been like, we don't really talk about that, you know, brought out as like, this is part of what makes us a good human.
Right. Yes. Yes. And
More about things.
I can see, you know, next generation, our
Yeah.
generation's slowly starting to get it. And then your kids would be a great example. I'm sure they're so open to all of this, and that,
Yeah.
yes, we just keep trickling down and getting a little wiser, hopefully.
Right.
Would be the one.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes. So I want to be respectful of your time, so we can start to wrap up a little bit here, but anything else that you would like to shout out that we are missing at the moment?
You know, I think one of the things that has really become clear to me this last year is, you know, the amount of misinformation that is put out into the media. And I think one of the things that, and I really value that in my children and their education. My eldest has done a PERSH, and he's now doing AP Economics. And one of the things that I think is so vital to us as humans is, where are you getting your information and how are you evaluating it?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I talk to my clients about is sort of the difference between qualitative and quantitative data, right? So I'll say to them, like, let's gather the quantitative data first, right? Like, how many hours a night are you sleeping? How many hours a week are you exercising? You know, how much time are you spending, you know, on Facebook? You know, what's the number in the bank account? What's the number in the scales? Let's gather some quantifiable data, right?
So
that
good.
we
Yes.
can look at and we can see what's going on, right? And it's the same with the rest of the world. Like, you know, don't go to Facebook, go to the CDC for your statistics on,
Yes.
you know, right?
Yes.
And then let's gather the qualitative data. Like, how do I feel when I'm with these people? How do I feel when I meditate? How do I feel when I'm doing this kind of work? How do I feel when I eat this kind of food, right? And really start to gather that felt data. And, you know, and Glennon Doyle does a really good job of like reminding us that as women, we tended to, you know, when we get sort of teenage, we shut down and we're just like, we do what we're told, rather than like listening to that inner voice. And, you know, I'm a big believer in listening to the inner voice, acting on what it's telling you, so that you create this loop of self-trust, right? Based on that really valuable piece of data, which a lot of us have been taught to ignore or diminish, you know? So
Right.
whether it's the, you know, like, I mean, you know, I grew up in central London and started taking public transport at the age of 11. I had to quickly learn that gut feeling of like, keep walking, change seats, because I was an 11-year-old girl out on my own in public, right? Like, that's not a safe, like, go into the grocery store. It doesn't feel safe being on the street on your own, you know. I learned to listen to that and trust it, right? But I think we need to do it with everything, right? We need to open up that, because we do have that visceral, and maybe you feel it in your gut, maybe you feel it in your heart, maybe you feel like wherever you feel, train it, listen to it, open up to it, and value that information as an important source of data.
Thank you so much for defining that so clearly. That was so well done, because as dietitians, even, we're very trained in our upbringing through school of evidence-based, you know, everything you seek out, the first thing we learn how to do is go to the source that is respected and evidence-based. And so there is always that. But then there is that other side that you're talking about, that there is the feeling side, and how do we kind of make them both coexist?
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
just that trust building. You are a voice, Tamsin, honestly, that you throw out all these other voices like an Oprah or a Glennon Doyle or Brene Brown. I put you right up there, girl. You are so inspiring. I could listen to you every day, and you're so wise, and you come across that way. And just thank you so much for gracing us with all of your wisdom today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to have your platform to share. And I just, as you can tell, like I get really excited about inspiring people to, you know, I guess the big thing is to take responsibility, and you have that power. So grab it, girlfriend, grab it.
Yeah, run with it. Yes. Oh, and if everybody on the listening end of this is like, how do I get more, Tamsin? I will put everything in the show notes, and they can go check out your programs and your Facebook group for more Monday meditation. And your book is online. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.